This is the Sony A1, the most powerful mirrorless camera known to mankind. Featuring a full-frame 50-megapixel sensor with 8K 10-bit capabilities. This camera was created by aliens, or at least you would think so because it is so much more advanced than anything on Earth that you have ever seen ever. You could even see a black hole if you wanted to, or at least imagine it, but even so, this camera will make it happen anyway.
Go out and get a salami snack for 10 seconds, and you come and steal my microphone.
Of course.
This is not the Dylan Jet channel. This is the Potato Jet channel. Get the f*** out of here.
Still get paid though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
First question comes to us from Mark Christian KC. Does it overheat? That's a really good question because when you're trying to shoot 8K in such a compact mirrorless camera body, it has trouble dissipating the heat and it might just R5 it. Now the A1's been baking in there. It's 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, which is the top of the operational range of what these cameras are supposed to be able to handle. I'm gonna turn it on, start recording, throw it back in there. I'm trying to simulate an 8K shoot on a hot day. Now the first 8K overheating test I did at room temperature around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and it literally went through the entire memory card and pretty much the battery without overheating, which is very impressive. I quickly swapped out the battery and memory card, let it go again, and zero overheating issues then. So the room temperature test, it did really good, but then I threw it in the incubator and didn't do as good. It shut down much faster. But here's the thing, with these cameras you can decide how far you want to push the heat before it shuts itself off to protect the camera. They're standard, which the first two tests were on, but now I have it on high, so the threshold should be a little bit higher. I don't know if this is great for the camera. You probably want to avoid it, but let's see how long it lasts in this mode. Time lapse. All right, so we are now past an hour and it's still going, which I'm pretty shocked about. I just opened it once around 50 minutes in to swap out the memory card and the battery, but when I did, it did feel really hot. So I think I'm probably gonna pull it out. Now, let's a little bit longer. Hopefully it doesn't break. Oh snap, okay, I think it turned off. All right, so I just did the math on how long it lasted. Guess how long? 69 minutes. Good one, Sony. Oh my gosh, Dylan, you look so great in 8K.
I try. Isn't 8K better than like all different kinds of...
It's a lot of Ks. More doesn't always mean better, but sometimes it does. Do you feel pretty cool sitting up there on that tall rock?
Kinda, yeah.
It's not even that tall, actually. I'm just shooting from a low angle, so it looks really tall. Oh yeah, and this is what you look like in 8K. There. Hi, how you doing, audience? Having a good day? Cool. Nice. So let's take a look at dynamic range real quick. Dylan's back there right now. This kind of looks like a title sequence for some corny 80s movie. Like you're about to go beat up some bad boys at an arcade or something. Dylan, try to look cool though. You're slipping all over the rocks.
So now that we have some footage to tinker with, let's pull it up on the screen. So we have 3 shots here, all from the Sony A1. One of the shots is 8K, one is 4K, and one is just HD. Can you guys tell which one is which? It may be a little bit trickier for you because you're watching it after YouTube's compression. For me, I can't really tell until I blow it up to full screen. I could definitely tell the one on the right is HD. The one on the left and the middle, they both look pretty dang good. I don't even have an 8K display. So let's make this a little bit easier and let's go 250% scale. So how about now? I think it's obvious that the one on the right is HD now, but the other two still look pretty good. If you look closely on my screen at least, you can slightly tell that the one in the middle is slightly sharper, but it's not like a massive difference. All right, let's just go all the way, go 750%. I mean, this is where the 8K is gonna shine, is where you do these extreme scale ups. Comparing the 8K to the 4K, it is definitely better, but is it worth the extra cost of doing all this work, having these massive file sizes? Also H.265, it's a compressed codec. Imagine trying to vlog in 8K and trying to edit that. I might try that actually. But yeah, it looks like the 4K is almost slightly out of focus, but it was the same lens, same setting, same everything. Everything was perfectly locked in. So the differences you're looking at is strictly the differences in resolution, which is cool. That means the 8K actually has a purpose. It actually is better. I'm excited to see this though, because usually you see these features in the flagship models, but they eventually start trickling into the more affordable options. By the way, this is $6,500-ish for the camera. $6,500. So I personally wouldn't buy this camera. I'm impressed by it, but I wouldn't buy it because this is more of a photography first camera. You can buy a Sony FX6 for less than that, which is video first, and Sony A7S III, which is also video first. You can buy two of those almost. But this 8K that this A1 offers, it's pretty insane, especially considering that it came out of the camera this big. That's it. 8K is 420. Everything else is 422, but you still get 10-bit across the board, so that's awesome. I'd rather have 10-bit 420 than 422 8-bit. But speaking about colors, let me go ahead and kick this over to someone who knows a lot more about colors than I do, because I don't know that much, actually, to be honest. Sorry, I should have admitted that.
Having 8K and a mirrorless hybrid camera is no doubt really cool. But what's even cooler is when PotatoJet sends you the footage to color grade from a camera he got from Sony. Lucky? In case you don't know who I am, my name is Denver Riddle, and I'm a colorist and one of the founders of CinemaGrade, a color grading plugin that makes color grading super fast and easy. So you might be wondering, what is my impression of grading footage from the Sony A1? Well, first off, 8K and even 4K in the H.265 codec is very taxing on most systems. So you'll definitely want to keep that in mind, even if you have a computer that's like flexing a big bicep. You'll still want to render or transcode the footage to get real-time playback in 8K. But honestly, who even has an 8K monitor? Onto the color of this camera, one thing we learned is if you record in 8K, the best you'll get is 420 color sampling. If you record in 4K, you get 422. So that is a trade-off when recording in 8K, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal because it's not a difference that you can actually see. Why you'd want the 422 is if you were keying a green screen or doing precise secondary corrections with HSL qualifiers. Now on to grading this. We received footage captured with two color profiles, S-Log3, S-Gamut 3, and S-Cinetone. S-Log3 is the color profile you're most likely familiar with, and S-Cinetone is Sony's newer color science that's closer to a Rec. 709 color space, but with a more cinematic look. But right out of the gate, I'm gonna tell you to ditch S-Cinetone. Why? Well, if you look at these two images, one shot in S-Log3, the other in S-Cinetone, you can see right away that S-Cinetone has clipping in the highlights. I mean, the whole reason we shoot log in the first place, besides to show how amazing our before and after is to get more dynamic range. S-Log3 captures the highest dynamic range that the camera is capable of, and I'd only suggest shooting in S-Tone if you're on a tight time schedule or you don't want to mess around with S-Log. Now, in terms of how we would grade this, we can use a LUT, a color space transform, or just do it manually. Let's see how this looks in your software. In DaVinci Resolve, we can add the color space transform effect and choose the corresponding color space and gamma. This gives us a good starting point that we can further refine with an S-curve and some hue and saturation adjustments. In Premiere Pro, we found that the free Cinecolor S-Log3 LUT from Gnome Kroll works really well with the Sony A1, only needing minimal adjustment. And in Final Cut Pro 10, we can also apply the built-in S-Log3 LUT to get a similar starting point like we had in DaVinci, and then just add a little more contrast and color. Finally, we found that the Sony A1 graded beautifully going all manual. We found that following a simple workflow of adding contrast first, adjusting the pivot, fine-tuning the detail in the shadows and highlights, and finishing off with a pop of color really made Dylan the star in PotatoJet's short film. I've shown this in CinemaGrade, but the same workflow applies in your software. So what are my final thoughts? Well, probably the thing that stood out to me the most is how sharp this camera is and the low noise in the shadows. Generally, when you shoot in low light and bring up the shadows, you introduce a lot of noise, but not so much with this sensor. I would have to say that Sony has done a really good job with their newest sensor and their latest color science. I would like to see higher chroma sampling just to get that cinema quality badge, but the 420 honestly isn't a deal breaker for me, especially if you can use an external recorder like an Atomos. It's not been since the first mini DV camera in the 90s that I actually owned a Sony. But with the new flagship A1, I'm definitely making eyes with you, Sony.
I'm blue. If I were green, I would die. Oh, hey, wasn't expecting you back so early. Shout out to Denver for having all that very insightful information on color grading. I'll link his information down below, and let's go answer some more questions and stuff. Jonas asks, is this a photo-only camera? Actually, no. I mean, the video capabilities are outstanding, but I do think that they did put photography as their priority when designing it. Caroline says, A1, better or worse than the steak sauce? I'd probably give it to the Sony. I don't really like steak sauce. I mean, I guess that's just like a personal opinion, but I don't know. If anything, I like to put a little bit of salt, and that's about it on my steak. Like, steak sauce ruins it for me. Itsubi asks, record limits. No, as long as you've got battery and a memory card in there, you should be good to go. Although I've had some Sonys in the past that said no record limit, and I think it was like 13 hours or something like that before it would cut on its own. So not sure if that will do that. Does it have better low light performance than the A7 III? It's got way more megapixels, which should be a bad thing for video, but it also costs so much more. I've got the A7S III, and I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's gonna have better low light because it has those massive pixels, but one way to find out. So as expected, the A7S III takes the win for the best low light, but the A1 was right there on its tail. It still has that great backside illuminated sensor, which means more light gets to hit the sensor compared to traditional sensors. So even at the extreme ISOs, it was still doing decent. But let's say you don't need to go all the way to that extreme of 12,800. That's probably the biggest weakness of this A7S III, because 6400 ISO is kind of right there in the middle of the two native ISO. And until you hit 12,800, you do not get to take advantage of that higher native ISO. So I would actually say in a lot of cases, the A1 would be the better low light camera until you go to 12,800, then the A7 takes the win there. Authentex says A1 versus A7S III 4K video side by side. From what I've seen, they both look very, very comparable. I've pretty much been using S-Log3 for everything, and the colors match up real nice. If there's anything I notice, I think the A7S III does a touch of digital sharpening, and some of you may like that because it does tend to look a little bit sharper. But at the same time, professional cameras like the FX6, they tend to not do that so that you have more control later in post. And that kind of brings me back to why I would rather have an A7S III than the A1, is because this has video in mind. I mean, look at this flip screen. I need this flip screen. I film myself all the time. But I imagine this A1 is going to be a very hot camera amongst a lot of the top tier photographers. There's crazy features in here like 30 frames per second in 50 megapixel bursts and raw, what? And I'm actually pretty shocked at how usable this 8K is. I've been waiting for a catch. Oh yeah, you can shoot 8K, but it won't do this. I mean, the only downsides again is 420. You can't do active image stabilization, but you can still use the standard stabilization, which is usually enough. You can't use like clear image zoom or crop mode, which is expected. I mean, overall, this 8K is actually usable in this camera, which it blows my mind. So even though this isn't the camera for me in particular, it is amazing to really just see how far this technology has come and what's possible out of such a small mirrorless camera now. But that's all I got for now. Thanks again to Denver for coming on the channel, and he's got a really useful YouTube channel, so I'll link it down below. And also next week, I'm dropping a video about this Canon C70 that I'm recording on right now, so ask me questions about it and I will be answering them then, and see you next week. I'm gonna get a headache. I'm too old to be headbanging.
Thank you guys so much for picking me as the giveaway winner for the new Insta360 ONE X2 camera. I love the channel and all the content you guys create.